Welcome to Breathe California TV. My name is Terry Trumbull. I'm a volunteer who hosts this TV show once a week. Today we are going to give you some ideas that will save you money, they'll cut back on your energy use, and they'll make your home safer. Sounds pretty good, right? We're talking with Jennifer Mitchell of Hillhouse Construction, and we'll talk about things that you can do to make a difference. See you in 30 seconds.
It's given me a chance to go out and be with people who has the same problem, and it helps you to manage your life better too, because you hear different things from each person, and it's just been really helpful in many ways.
Welcome back. My name is Terry Trumbull. This is Breathe California TV. Breathe California is the lung health organization for California. Last year, just in the South Bay, we helped 150,000 people with breathing difficulties. So most of our efforts, and I'm a volunteer, hope you'll join me, for Breathe California are on people with asthma, allergies, COPD, some sort of difficulty in breathing. But today we're going to be talking with Jennifer Mitchell of Hillhouse Construction about how to prevent those problems. And you'll be shocked when we talk with Jennifer about all the different things that you can do to make a difference. So welcome.
Thank you.
So you work, Hillhouse works on all types of buildings, I assume.
Commercial buildings, yes.
But the kind of things we're going to talk about aren't only true of a shopping center or an office space that we might visit or work in, but most of them be applied to people at home.
Right. The technology in green building really applies to all aspects of our lives where we live, work, and play. So what, the LEED, for example, is a certification process, and Zero Net Energy is another one that our company uses.
So you can give all these definitions right away. So what does LEED mean? It's certifying what?
Well, basically what we're trying to do is go beyond what policy demands as far as what is a healthy building to live in or to work in. So LEED basically, they use what we call a triple bottom line accounting system. And that employs 3 pillars of sustainability. So we look at the social, the economic, and the environmental aspects. And you could probably say there's a 4th pillar, which is the future. And basically we use this accounting principle to look at the societal cost and benefits. So processes of construction, or it could be products that are to be used. We look at the whole picture of how those products, how they're processed, how they're used, where they come from, and how they impact society as a whole.
So let me phrase this differently, true or false. So what you're going to be talking about is making a building something other than just a piece of concrete or metal that gets thrown up, but designing it for, again, your 3 pillars are?
Yeah, the social, the economic, and the environment.
So
yes.
Social meaning how it interrelates with its neighborhood or with people?
Yeah, exactly. For instance, we would pick a site that is close to a park or where a park would be built. There's bike paths. It's very much connected to the surrounding environment. It's close to public transportation, so it cuts down on commuting and being in a car. We never build on a wetland or on prime farmland or in a forest. We look at conserving natural resources as far as site selection. And then as far as the building itself, we attempt to reduce energy demand by making the buildings more energy efficient.
So again, ZNE.
Yes. So ZNE stands for Zero Net Energy. So basically, it's a building that produces more energy than it consumes.
And that kind of reminds me, my dad was an engineer, and he said there's no such thing as a perpetual energy machine. How in the world can you get a building to produce more energy than it's using?
Well, solar photovoltaics are a big part of that. Generating your own energy on site, and then reducing the amount of energy the building needs. In one project we're working on, we use passive strategies before we use our mechanical system. So we have a very efficient HVAC system. However, it's more of a backup. So
And HVAC is heating and cooling.
yes, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, yes. So the building is full of sensors. So it senses temperature, it sensors air quality, sensors light, motion. So for instance, if the building gets too warm and it's cooler outside, the sensors tell the building to open up the windows. So instead of having 40 employees running around trying to open windows, the system does that for you. It senses what temperature you need, it'll open and close the windows or turn on the fans. If the air quality sensor detects that the air quality inside the building is poorer than outside, it'll do the same thing. It opens the windows to let air in. So we're using a passive system primarily.
So we may lose our train of thought here, but you're just laying out all sorts of concepts that it's really important to understand. So passive, give me an example of it. Maybe I'll start off by saying we have a window in our house. It's a picture window, so it's really wide, and it does face towards the south, the sun side. But it has a trellis on it so that in the summer when it's hot, everything grows green and no sun reaches the house, and in the winter time, the sun shines in directly because it's not evergreen. So is that a passive system?
Yes, yes. And technology has taken that kind of concept to the next level. We're using new products, glazing on windows that actually can read the amount of solar radiation and adjust the tint of the windows. So instead of being burning up inside the building from the sun coming in the summer, the sensors read solar radiation and automatically tint the windows for you. So again, that strategy to try and keep the indoor, air quality and temperature consistent.
Well, I got to hire you right away. I'm serious. My house was built in 1934. We had a 1965 edition before I bought it that probably was as inefficient on energy as you could humanly be. And then in 1989, we did an edition which was state of the art for everything then. But we still got the window I was telling you about is the 1934 windows. They're not even double paned. So I told you we were going to start off talking. Do I need to get an architect for that, or do we call a construction company like Hillhouse? Now you're only doing commercial, but
Right.
Do we call a construction company that's slick?
Call someone who is familiar with and has experience doing these types of projects, and Hillhouse certainly is. There are also a lot of great architects out there. We work with a few of them as well. Primarily, you want to find someone who's done something like this before and is comfortable with the technology and is up to speed on what new things are out there. As you said, you had the top of the line window when you built the house, but technology is always changing. So what was great 10 years ago is not necessarily what's the best thing on the market today. And the more we learn about sustainability, more sustainable products enter the market. And so we're always evolving, and we're always looking at new opportunities to improve products or processes.
So I really want to praise the type of solar you're talking about, because every building ought to have solar on it. We call that distributed energy, as opposed to there's a proposal to go to San Benito County and take 3,000 acres of farmland, put up solar. And it's easy to think, well, gosh, solar is good, but why use farmland when we can put it on the buildings and have no transmission lines?
Right, and we're very fortunate here in California that we have the weather we do and the sun that we do, because we have the perfect location for solar. And it's become much more common recently, especially for homeowners, because it's become more affordable. And the same is true of the commercial industry. And with policy and technology, we're really headed in that direction where, solar is really kind of the hub of our energy production, both for commercial and residential.
So I was at a press conference, and got it maybe 10 years ago now, where they had skylights in the building that generated electricity. There was solar actually embedded, wires or some sort of, I'm going to sound like a lawyer, right? But is that feasible? Is that sort of thing you guys would do?
Yeah, anything is feasible. Certainly, there's so much technology out there. Really, when it comes down to it, if we had acres and acres of campus to design for, we could use every technology that's out there. It really comes down to the needs of the building and the site and the user, and determining what is the best, what are the best products for the purpose of and the long-term intent of that building. Yeah, so certainly technologies of that sort, we're going to see more and more of that as time goes on.
So Jennifer, we know we certify buildings for their energy efficiency, and you feel free to correct me on that. How do you get LEED after your name as professional credentials?
So I'm a LEED accredited professional, so buildings are certified and people are accredited. So it's a process of taking an exam and going through some learning and some studying. My background is environmental studies. I received my bachelor's from San Jose State.
San Jose State?
In environmental studies with a minor in business. And I went on and I had such a great time there learning about environmental studies. I went on to get a master's in environmental policy from the University of Illinois. So I really had that background, and plus my construction background, and I really wanted to tie that together, so I jumped into LEED and studied that and took the exam and became a LEED accredited professional.
So does that impose any obligations on you in helping with design? I mean, are you only allowed to design LEED qualified buildings, or it just says, hey, I've got these credentials where your building is going to be more sustainable?
I think what being LEED accredited has to offer is that you have the background knowledge to know why these things are important and where they should be used appropriately. It's one thing to just go through and say, well, I heard this was good. I heard, this technology, let's add that. Let's throw that on the building. But having gone through the LEED process and getting accredited, you really have to learn about material selection, site selection, water efficiency, energy efficiency, air quality. And you're really learning why these things are important and the role that they play in a building. So really you kind of have the knowledge to know, what works best, what's going to be best for this situation.
So when I started out talking about sustainability or telling everybody we're going to learn about energy savings, I probably should have said something given California's current state, and I would maintain permanent state of needing to save water. So that's just as important a part as the energy use.
Yeah, it really is. And everyone has heard about our water crisis here and the drought, and LEED and other voluntary certifications, they address that or attempt to address it, and work in a positive direction to conserve as much water as possible. Not only indoors as far as plumbing and indoor water use, but also outdoor as far as like rainwater catchment and permeable paving systems, retaining water on site, rainwater, and capturing that rainwater, using it for irrigation. Really, in California we have this problem, to a large scale, but really, LEED is designed, on a national and global level. So these technologies are employed everywhere. It's just even more important that we're using them here in California.
Well, one of the things I really like about the LEED standards is that a building that's built that way is pretty much going to be that way for its whole history. What I'm trying to say is our local water district, for example, has irritated me because they only tell people to conserve when we're in dry years, when my view is that it is a permanent part of life in California. And if you build a building, it's going to stay that way for good or bad. If you build a building that you wouldn't dare talk about, it's going to be bad, like I mentioned with my house, for 80 years. And the reverse side is if you do a LEED certified building, you're going to have good things happening permanently, whether we get 40 inches of rain or 5 inches of rain.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really the driving force behind LEED is long-term sustainability. We're not designing just for, the drought situation we're having now. We're designing for life. We're designing using products that are going to be around forever, that have a low environmental impact or no environmental impact. We're conserving water all the time, conserving energy all the time. We're concerned about air quality all the time. These things are in place and they're meant to be sustainable for very long periods of time. Concrete is one element, and it's a field that I worked in. Concrete is a product that lasts a really, really long time. So it's the foundation of every building. So really, from the foundation up, we're looking at products that last a long time, are durable, have good thermal qualities, have a low impact on the environment, and given that, yes, ultimately these buildings are long-term sustainable.
So I'm thinking about building something in my home that would use concrete. For me, concrete is concrete. Talk a little bit about differences, probably using your term, sustainability. Most of us might think of it as energy, between the kind that we buy, how it gets put together, its long-term use.
Right, so concrete,
invented by the Romans, maybe?
Yes. So, there's several components to concrete, water, aggregates, cementitious materials. Cement, when we talk about sustainability in concrete, cement is kind of the one thing that pops up, because to produce 1 pound of cement, you're also putting off 1 pound of CO2. So really lowering the amount of cement.
And this is just CO2. It doesn't go to the additional energy you're putting into it. The release pollutant coming off is the CO2. But
right.
You had to have used a lot of energy to make that as well.
Yes. So the concrete industry has attempted to, kind of work around those or work through those issues. One thing is, we're using a lot less cement. So we're able to, we've been able to make our technology better so that we can get just as strong a concrete without using as much cement. And we're also using recycled products. And we're using recycled products from other industries that are byproducts. For instance, fly ash and slag, they're byproducts of coal and iron, production of coal and iron. So we capture those and we embody them in concrete. So we're taking pollutants and waste energy, embodying that in the concrete. And then that concrete is in place, hardened for years and years and years, so that toxic material is embodied. So we're using recycled content, we're lowering cementitious, we're using returned concrete as much as possible. So there will be times when you need to use new concrete, and what goes into it at this point, are a lot of recycled products. And you could feel good knowing that people who are designing concrete today are designing for sustainability and for long term.
And I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. We're going to take a break. We're talking with Jennifer Mitchell of Hillhouse Construction about ways that your home, your office, the commercial facilities you go visit can be safer and you can save money. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
The nice thing about Better Breathers Club is we go in and there's other people sitting around with oxygen. It's almost a relief that everybody looks the same in the room. It's a funny thing to say, but it's a good feeling. Breathe California means having resources available to us that will help guide us and make our lives easier.
Welcome back to Breathe California TV. My name's Terry Trumbull. I chair the Pollution Prevention Committee. What pollution prevention means is listening to Jennifer Mitchell of Hillhouse Construction, because she's talking about things that are part of our life that reduce the potential damage to our lungs or the rest of our society. So we were talking about concrete. You may know I used to be the state garbage man, and at that time, when I left in 1985, it seemed like nobody was reusing concrete. They just would throw it away. I gather that may have changed.
Yes, well, the construction industry is really trying to reduce the amount of waste that we send to a landfill. So we try to use as many products as we can, reuse them. If we're demoing a building, we can use, we can salvage wood, we can reuse concrete panels, and all of that diverts things from going to the landfill. So concrete, for instance, because it's so durable and it lasts a long time, you can take concrete from a building that is fully constructed now and it's been in place for years, and take portions of, for instance, the concrete walls out, and those are slabs you can use for concrete benches or for landscaping. They can be crushed and used as rock. So yeah, primarily, the first thing in sustainability is to try and reuse the materials you already have on site. So reusing concrete, because it's a durable long-term material, that's first priority. Reusing wood or any product, metals, anything you have on site. If you can reuse that in some way on site, that's goal number one. If you do have to, obviously bring in new materials, you're looking for materials that have a low impact on the environment. I mentioned, concrete and kind of the way technology has gone in designing concrete. Now concrete's being designed to have a minimal impact on the environment and using a lot of recycled materials. So that's positive.
Minimal impact, is that the way it's being used or the way you produce it? For example, we have a cement plant here. Are there much less energy intensive ways of generating concrete?
Well, yes. We'll never be I don't think we'll be at a place where we could say we have no environmental impact just as a society. So everything has some environmental impact. Just sitting here breathing has an environmental impact. So we attempt to reduce it as much as possible. And by that I mean we're trying to reduce the amount of energy it takes to produce these resources. We try to use resources that are close to home, so we're not transporting them from other places. When the concrete's batched and the truck's on the road, we're using vehicles that put out a minimal amount of emissions. So the industry as a whole is taking advantage of whatever technology is available to reduce the impact on the environment. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to do a follow-on. So an awful lot of homes are being knocked down in my area and bigger homes being put there. And it looks to me like they knock it down in about a day and then they just throw it all in the back of a dump truck. Is that being reused or is that going to a landfill?
Well, in the city of San Jose, it's required that a majority of that is used in some kind of recycling purpose. We're doing everything we can as an industry to recapture that, at least on the commercial side. And really that comes at the planning, the forefront of the project, and saying, what do we have on site? What do we want for this project? What can we reuse? So it really takes upfront planning. There's still a lot to learn. There's still, Hillhouse, we think of ourselves as kind of the forerunner in the industry, and we're probably setting the pace for others to follow. But there's still a lot of plenty of a learning curve for others in the industry, and hopefully, eventually, the technology and the processes that we're using will catch on, and everybody will be using these processes.
Well, I mean, it's easy for us to brag, I think, for good cause. As you in Hillhouse, I hope everybody is doing what you're doing, because that is the only way we're going to have a sustainable future. You mentioned greenhouse emissions, we've got to do everything in all aspects of our life to try to approach that. So we only got a couple of minutes left, but you know, I'm watching this show and I'm saying, God, this stuff's all great, but it's going to cost me money. So one of the questions I continually ask students is, would you pay more for a building to get one that saves energy? Because realtors say nobody wants to pay more money for a house, no matter how good you say the operating costs or the reductions are. What would be your argument?
Well, it's funny because consumer behavior is difficult to change. And you know, when I talk about the 3 pillars of society and the social, economic, and environmental costs, that's really what you have to think about. You know, when you think about, oh, I'm going to be paying more up front, are you considering all of the costs, all the social costs involved? And are you really looking at the long-term benefits to yourself, to the people around you? And especially when you talk about air quality, you know, is it worth saying, I'm not going to spend a little bit more money for a house that's sustainable? You know, is that worth it, knowing that, you know, you would be purchasing a home that has sustainable qualities, and air quality is one of those issues. You know, I'm living in a house or I'm working in a building that addresses air quality as well as, you know, all of these other things. What is it worth to you? So I would say it's worth it. It's definitely worth it to spend a little bit more money.
So just right there, you've mentioned one thing that I failed to get around to, indoor air quality, because the way you design a building makes a difference. So you have to come back to the show again and we can talk about that.
Sure.
And 8 or 9 other things you and I agreed we'd talk about but never got to.
No
So we're about 30 seconds left. What's your quick summary of what our audience ought to remember from this?
You know, sustainable construction and building a green building is extremely important because we all live, work, or play in these buildings. So as, you know, a resident of the area, you know, understand that as a consumer, you're the economic driver of change. You know, as a resident, you're the social driver of change. And our own humanity within is our environmental driver of change. So think about that when you're posed with the question of, is it worth spending a little bit more money to do it right up front? Because it certainly is.
And we've been speaking with Jennifer Mitchell of Hillhouse Construction. Hopefully we'll have a program just as good for you next week. See you then.